You know, that's filled down. Yeah, I can do it. And I even looked to see if Camaro had the same street line, but if I was to go back.
I had a 68 Mustang at the same time my brother had a 68 Camaro, and so we were always sharing everything.
That was item number one, was to officially.
No,
July 4th, extended bar.
his was just a.
All right, well, there's a lull in the crowd, so we'll take that opportunity to. I call to order the June 14th, 2021 meeting of the Oxford Planning Commission. Commissioners, you have your agenda in front of you. We have some postponements, including number 5, which is administrative, number 7, which is a consent, and number 12, which is a public hearing. Those have been postponed, so those will be removed from the agenda or skipped. Any other additions or revisions need to be made to our agenda? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move approval.
I have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? The agenda is approved, which brings us now to approval of our minutes from our May 10th, 2021 meeting. Commissioners, you've had the opportunity to review those. Are there any revisions, changes, deletions need to be made to our May 10th, 2021 meeting, meeting minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the May 10, 2021 minutes.
So moved.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor? All right, the motion carries. The minutes are approved. Staff report, Ben.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to introduce Angie Gregson. She is our new planning administrator. She's been with us for a few weeks now, and we're real excited to have her on our staff, and she's a great addition. So at least wanted to introduce you to her, and then also wanted to congratulate our chairman, who won his election, and this actually will be his last meeting with us on the planning commission.
That's correct. Thank you, Ben. My last meeting tonight.
So we'll keep working with you just at board. That's right.
I hope so. At least for 4 years. All right. Thank you, Ben. Angie, welcome.
Thank you.
Good luck. Which now brings us to administrative approvals that was postponed. The only administrative approvals not on our agenda. Consent agenda is just one case. It was a consent agenda for the applicant was Lance Forsdick, case number 2750. He filed a request for a special exception as to the front yard build-to line maximum for property located at the intersection of Ed Perry Boulevard and Commonwealth Boulevard. Any commissioner wish to take that off consent agenda? Does anyone here tonight wish to voice an objection or wish to have a hearing on the matter which is on consent agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved, which now brings us to our public hearings. The first item on our agenda for a public hearing is case number 2752. It's Pine Lake Church Incorporated, and it's a site plan approval for Pine Lake Church property located at Pat Patterson Parkway. Robert.
The subject property is located on Pat Patterson Parkway, approximately 500 feet northeast of Old Sardis Road, across from an entrance to M Trade Park. The applicant is proposing to build an approximately 60,000 square foot church on about 12 acres. As to use requirements, religious assembly uses with more than 600 seats are classified as large religious assembly uses and require special exception, which was granted at the April 21 Planning Commission meeting. For parking, there is a breakdown of the parking requirements in the staff report, but required parking for all total uses is 364 spaces. With a 25% parking allowance for the maximum, it comes to 455, and the applicant plans for 400 spaces right in the middle of those two. For coverage, height, and setback requirements, uses in the TNB are limited to 80% lot coverage, and this has 48.6% lot coverage. Buildings in the TNB are required to be at least 2 stories, though a single story may be requested by special exception. A special exception for the use of a single story building was granted in the April 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Setbacks for the front, side, and rear in TNB districts are set at between 0 and 58 feet, 10 foot on one side, and 25 feet respectively. Side and rear setbacks are met with this proposal, and a variance for the front build to line was granted at the April 21 Planning Commission meeting to accommodate stormwater facilities. Other review elements include landscaping, tree mitigation, which all meet the LDC requirements, and no mitigation trees are required for this development. Lighting, a photometric study has been provided that meets the requirements of the LDC. Access, the site will take access off of Pat Patterson, and there are 2 future potential access points on the eastern side of the property if a new road is constructed. Building materials, a special exception was granted for the use of metal paneling at the May Planning Commission meeting. All other proposed materials conform to the standards set in the LDC. And for signage, site plan does not include approval of signage. They'll have to come back for that in a separate approval process. Engineering had comments related to access, water, sewer, and stormwater that can be found in the report, and all other departments have reviewed the site plan and have recommended approval. Staff recommends approval of the requested special exception with the 4 conditions listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions for the commission?
Yeah, I've got a quick stormwater question.
Applicant's engineers here.
Yeah.
Derek Tier with Precision Engineering.
Yeah, so the stormwater is divided, kind of, there's a northern section and a southern section, and I just noticed that along the southern section at the last inlet, one, it takes a hard left to go into the pond, but then it also, the diameter goes from 36-inch down to 24-inch.
Yes, that was a mistake on my part. I mean, since then, that mistake's been caught, and that pipe's been upsized to a 36-inch.
Okay.
And it no longer takes a 90-degree, it will come straight out into the pond.
Perfect, thanks.
Thank you. Any additional questions?
Robert, I've just got one. The last line before it says other departments, it says, at the time this case report was written, staff had not received response to all the comments. I'm assuming those have all been addressed now, or?
Engineering they have not. You.
Everything that I've had should have been addressed. I may need to get with you on
Steve Brunton, engineering staff. As of the time I wrote that, I had not received that last round of comments I have, and I do not believe I have them now, and I'll get with Derek and
I'm sorry,
confirm.
you don't believe what?
I do not believe I've received responses to those comments yet. So I will get to, that's the condition for approval will be, they have to meet those comments.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Any additional questions from Commission? Anyone here wish tonight to voice an opinion one way or the other as to Pine Lake's request for site plan approval, understanding the comments made here tonight? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion on case number 2752, Pine Lake Church's request for site plan approval for Pine Lake Church property located at Pat Patterson Parkway.
I move that we approve the site plan, subject to staff conditions.
Is it my understanding, JR, that the staff conditions will be amended to provide that they get, that's in there? I thought so, okay. All right, I have a motion to approve the staff conditions as stated within. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That brings us now to a public hearing for case number 2753, Drew Joyner. It's a request for site plan approval for Waffle House. It's property located at Perry Boulevard. Gray.
Yes, sir. This site plan is less than 5,000 square feet. It's one of the smaller size projects that come through our office and would ordinarily be approved administratively. However, the previously granted parking variance and special exception for the Build 2 line for the Waffle House were appealed to the Mayor and Board of Aldermen by several Oxford Commons residents. The Mayor and Board upheld the Commission's decision, and the Board determined that due to the public's interest in the particular development, it was necessary for the Planning Commission to hear this item as a public hearing in order to provide the neighborhood with the opportunity to review the plans and provide any commentary in a public forum. The subject property is located at the northeast corner of the roundabout at Sisk Avenue and Ed Perry Boulevard in the Oxford Commons Planned Unit Development. This property is adjacent to Highway 7 on the west side, and the property measures just over half an acre and is undeveloped. This particular lot is isolated, separated by 3 roads from the remainder of the Oxford Commons Planned Unit Development. And the proposed building will measure approximately 1,800 square feet. From the planning department, our additional review elements, the building facade, architecturally will have brick along each side of the building and architectural treatment and gooseneck lighting. A raised parapet lines the entire roof, shielding any rooftop mounted equipment. Staff has approved the complete streets plan. An additional crosswalk will be provided that spans across Ed Perry Boulevard and connects with the sidewalk adjacent to True Hotel. The proposed landscape design meets all standards related to parking lot, edge, foundation planting, and frontage tree requirements, and no mitigation was required for the site. There weren't any trees. A photometric lighting plan has been provided and approved by staff. The drawing indicates that all luminaries will be shielded and shaded with light projecting downward. Open space coverage, impervious coverage meets our requirements. For parking, there's 29 parking spaces provided, and that is per the variance from March. And the point of ingress, egress onto the site is at the northern portion of the property, and there's just this one driveway which is 30 feet wide. And signage for this, for Waffle House, will also be a additional approval from the planning department. From engineering staff, related to traffic, all traffic impact requirements are fulfilled by the TIF agreement between the city and Oxford Commons LLC with the completion of the Sisk Avenue Highway 7 roundabouts, the extension of Sisk Avenue, and the completion of FD Buddy East Parkway to Highway 6. Staff received a comment from a citizen requesting consideration of a right in, right out only driveway at this location in light of any perceived hazards that could exist in relation to how close the entry is to the roundabout. Engineering staff does not support a right in, right out driveway as they typically create more problems than they solve. The driveway location was selected with safety in consideration and is aligned directly across from the shared driveway of the future El Charro restaurant and the True Hilton Hotel. The driveway is located over 150 feet from the roundabout, which is more than adequate space for cars to queue outside of the roundabout. Engineering staff states that there is not significant volume of traffic on Sisk or Ed Perry to create a sustained delay for left turns into Waffle House. I went from talking about the right, and now I'm talking about any left turn coming north up Ed Perry, or any issue for an extended queue into that intersection. In consideration of the citizen comments related to entry into the site, staff has included a condition that a left turn lane or other solution as provided or as approved by engineering will be constructed at the expense of Waffle House in the event that city staff determines there's a conflict with traffic associated with entering or exiting the Waffle House. For stormwater, the Waffle House project stormwater management facility consists of an underground basin located in the northern half of the parking lot. Staff has not, at this time, has not approved the stormwater management plan. There are several minor and technical things to tweak, but staff anticipates that all comments can be satisfactorily addressed, and the stormwater management plan approval is conditioned for. Staff recommends approval of the site plan for Waffle House with the 5 conditions stated in the report.
Gray, at the northern point of the property, there's what seems to be it doesn't seem to be a parking space. It has what is basically I don't know what you call them, diagonal lines through it. What is that?
I believe it's the fire lane, so that a fire truck can back up.
Okay, so it's not going to be used for parking?
No, sir.
All right.
Great. The condition number 4, I think it was 4. Let me check here.
Condition
No,
4 is the
5.
storm. Okay.
5. Saying Waffle House will be required to construct a left turn lane. That's in perpetuity. How does that?
So we, as you heard, we received some concerns about the potential for that to happen. We think that that event taking place is unlikely, but we also wanted to at least have something in here in case, so that way if it were to come up, then we can evaluate it again in the future. I think if there are if there are circumstances that that change 5-10 years down the road, I think we're going to have to evaluate that. And I don't necessarily know that I don't know that in perpetuity is is fair. But I think what we're saying is if something were to happen as that Oxford Commons develops, we're going to have to take a look at that. We may have to take a look at that, and if that were to be the case, then as is the case with a lot of our developments that warrant infrastructure improvements, the development will be subject to that cost. Now, as part of that ongoing analysis, again, we'll have to make those determinations at that time.
And that will run with the property as well, though. So in case Waffle House sells, moves, opens somewhere else in town.
Again, I think we would have to determine the circumstances at that time, and if there's a new development, the site itself doesn't lend itself to a drive-through situation, and so I mean, if it's like a raise and then rebuild, I mean, I think that would be a new site plan. If it's a modification to incorporate a drive-through of some kind, I think we would have to look at that as part of a site plan amendment as well, and then we would have to evaluate how that development is potentially impacting, or that particular use is impacting, the roundabout as the condition lays it out.
Any additional questions from the commission? Anyone here tonight wish to voice an objection or wish to ask questions? All right. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion as to case number 2753, the site plan approval for Waffle House at Ed Perry Boulevard. Or a motion in general.
Motion to approve, subject to staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve subject staff conditions. Is there a second?
Second?
There is a second. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item for consideration is public hearing for case number 2754. Tim Smith, he's filed a request for a variance from section 2.6.12 of the Historic Urban Center density maximum for property located at 208 South Lamar.
This site measures approximately 2,000 square feet. It's in the Historic Urban Center. It's located in the Courthouse Square Historic Preservation Commission. The applicant is requesting a variance from the floor area ratio standards in this district. Floor area ratio is a term that expresses the relationship between the amount of usable floor area permitted in a building and the area of the lot on which the building stands. The FAR standard in the Historic Urban Center is 2.5. Meaning that a development of a building on the entire site could occur 2.5 times. Buildings in the Historic Urban Center that do not face the Lafayette County Courthouse may be constructed to 3 stories, so long as they do not exceed 40 feet in height. But with an FAR, it is unlikely that a full 3rd story could be constructed. In this instance, the building that was previously constructed at 208 South Lamar was determined to be a safety concern. As a result of that determination, the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission granted an emergency COA to demolish the building in February of 2020. A few weeks after this building was granted the COA, the pandemic swept the nation, and the developer paused on redevelopment plans for this site. Since that time, the applicant has worked with his architect and the Courthouse Square Historic Preservation Commission to propose a new building that complies with the design guidelines. After several iterations of the building design with considerable amount of feedback from commissioners and staff, the commission did approve the design at the April 2021 meeting. The proposed design by the applicant and his architect intend to provide commercial uses at the ground floor and the 2nd floor with a residential use at the 3rd floor. The design does limit the building's mass by providing a recessed 3rd floor, and careful consideration has been paid to the building height to the adjacent Square Books building and the roof line presented to the South Lamar elevation. The applicant is requesting a 0.2 FAR variance, which is approximately 400 additional square feet to be constructed at this site. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance with the condition listed in the report. And Corey Auger is here. I think he's got a few documents, and Tim Smith is also on virtually.
Any questions?
I have a question. What is the reason for the variance? What is the hardship?
Good evening, I'm Corey Auger. I'm happy to address the hardship and variance. The plan that you have in front of you specifically shows. I was hoping that this is going to work or not. Yeah. But this is just, it helps with the graphic. What we're proposing is basically a 2.2 variance ratio. To answer your question, the property and the FAR doesn't designate between large parcels and small parcels. It just says 2.5. The entire piece of property is 2,000 square feet, of which we have some encroachment a little bit on this northern property line. But we've pulled the property back here, and if 400 square feet were to meet the ratio, it would basically basically the upper floor would be not usable. The request is for 0.2 because we feel like that's pretty much the minimum that we could make usable out of the upper floor given the design that you have before you. If the property were larger, obviously different considerations, but considering how small it is and what we're requesting.
Any further questions? Judy, got anything else?
I mean, my comment would be that's the size it was when you bought it. That's. Which could constitute a hardship and could not. I mean, that's my question, is does it?
Any more from the commission?
Yeah, I'm gonna trace that the hardship is that you couldn't get the third floor without the variance for the FAR, right?
Well, the hardship is basically two things. One is the size of the property, and two, the FAR as it's laid out in the land development code doesn't articulate why it's 2.5 versus 2.6 versus 2.8 versus 2.2. It doesn't give you a designation as to why that 2.5 is relative to any and all parcels. Around the square, properties are 132 feet deep. You know, that's half of that would be 60 feet back. You know, the entire piece of property is only 46 feet deep. So the idea is, given the general height constraint and the floor-to-floor constraint and the size constraint, this is what we feel like is the minimum request that we could get away with and still make the property usable while still recessing the building back from the street on both sides, which was what the Preservation Commission was wanting us to pursue.
The usable part, the variance is for the residential piece, right? For the
It is. It's for the area she's shaded in green.
So the usability, you could use it as a commercial space, a two-story commercial space without the variance.
Yes, it's going to be a two-story commercial space.
That's what I'm saying, but you could use it as a two-story commercial space without the variance. So the hardship is not being able to put the residential piece in.
Well, we could put 1,000 square feet of residential space in.
Without the FAR.
Without the FAR, as opposed to 1,400 square feet, which is what we're putting up there, is a 1,400 square foot third floor space.
I got you.
The difference is the 400 square feet, what we were allowed to have versus what makes the third floor usable, given elevator and stair requirements and things like that.
So you could fit 1,000 square feet up there and stay within the 2.5.
Sure.
Okay. And this is a question for staff too. I want to understand how this works exactly. So the FAR is for the whole building. So say you carved out, you know, just for instance, the entrance on the corner downstairs, made that external, if it were that small a difference, which it's not. But you could carve out theoretically space in one of the other two floors that was then outdoor space, and that would compensate. Is that how it works?
Yes.
Okay.
And Corey, the basement and storage?
Yeah, there's a below grade basement, the hole that you see over there now.
That's gonna be, okay.
Yeah, there'll be a basement. It'll be below grade. You will never see it there, but yeah, it'll be used as storage space for the commercial space. I mean, it's tiny.
Okay.
And do we count that in the FAR? Is that
Below grade.
no?
It's not below grade.
So what would it look like with 1,000 square feet of residential?
It basically, where you would see that line that you see right there going vertical. That's the living area and the kitchen area you see would be gone.
So it'd be a one bedroom as opposed to a two bedroom?
It depends on how you want to carve out a living room and a kitchen out of that too.
It turns into a studio apartment.
It grows into 1,000 square feet. The difference is 1,000 square feet versus 1,400 square feet.
Yeah.
That's
my
the
first house was 1,100 square feet. I had 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
Yeah.
Didn't have an elevator.
And I think that's kind of where I am with this right now, is why do we need a variance on a property that is really just to add more residential space, when we could have residential up there?
Well, usable residential and residential by designation are two different things. And given the size of apartments generally that are around the square, I mean, it's just,
I don't know, what is,
I don't know that this,
what's
it's
a one
400 square
bedroom?
feet.
I know.
I just don't know what to tell you. I mean,
Well, what's the difference between a usable residential and a or the terms you just used right there?
400 square feet. In our opinion, it's 400 square feet.
But is there like a technical definition of it? Or is it just kind of a general? No, okay.
This is Tim Smith. Could I interject for just a minute?
Absolutely, Tim, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. The third floor, we're calling this a residential, but the reality is if there could be a commercial use and a potential commercial tenant, the entire building could be that space. It's just, and looking at different iterations of the space, I don't know that the residential is the most desired, but if we could get someone that would take it as commercial, it could be commercial. So we would really want to have that flexibility that, that would be the first option if we could have a commercial there. But if we can't, then, I feel like there's probably a bigger market for the residential. That's why we were trying to just keep option for both, but just felt as we got to 1,000 feet, the elevator space, and if we have to go the residential route, it just makes it much less usable. I think someone mentioned or used the comment studio. That's about what it amounts to. So we just felt like the other space made it more. We're just trying to make the building more business viable. Obviously, to someone's comment, well, they bought it that way. Well, we really didn't buy a building thinking we had to tear it down, but unfortunately, we are where we are right now. So any consideration is appreciated.
So let me ask you, you're saying that it would be more desirable for y'all to have commercial space up there? Is that
would be my first option as a tenant. If we had if for an office space or whatever, when we get far enough with the approval process, we're going to go to market with it, and that would be a desirable. I'd rather have a commercial used for commercial space. I have my just have some reservations that there will actually be a market for it, but having the residential gives us an option.
Ben, was that a request by the city that top floor be residential?
No, that was not. That was not a request by the city. And I just want, hey, Tim, just a point of clarification. The request that's before us tonight are for plans that have the 2 floors of commercial and the 3rd floor of residential, and staff's evaluation of this and recommendation is based on exactly that, exactly what's there. So should those plans change in the future for a different use, then the variance is not applicable in that situation. What we're looking at right now is and what the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission evaluated in this instance. These are the plans that will be associated with this FAR variance.
Yeah, I understood, Ben, and I just think market-wise, I think that's where it will be. If and that's the path that we're going down, is for it to be residential. If the reality is we want to lease every inch that's in there. So if that's, and I think that it will be two floors of the commercial space and then a residential on the 3rd. So that's our intent down that path. And I guess I'm trying to explain to the commission and share that, we're just trying to find the most viable commercial option for this, for this property.
Okay. I'll just say my kind of general thoughts, Tim, and this is Duncan Gray. if you all are looking and you feel like commercial would be more viable, and you could do this without a variance and get the commercial space that you want, that's the path I would prefer, as opposed to us granting a variance for something that you all aren't really wanting in the first place. That's your second option. That's just.
Well, yeah, Mr. Gray, I understand that. I just, with all the advice I guess I've been sought out and talked to, the folks that are in this market seem to think that the residential is going to be the most best use, the most commercially usable way to use the property. So that's, you know, I guess if a year ago when we were, you know, talking about this and going down the path, I thought, yes, we can get some extra space, but as we've gone over time, I guess I was just reflecting my comments where if I were could wave a magic wand, it would be all commercial. But unfortunately, I think we're going to be 2 floors of commercial, and then with that, the best space up there is going to be residential. Because the information, because I will just tell you, the interest we've had in it so far, there's been 0 commercial interest up there. So while it might be my preference, I don't think that's what the market is going to allow for up there.
I guess there are numerous properties that are around the square that are over and above 2.5 and 2.7, and they're much larger pieces of property. Harrison's 1200 Harrison that was just approved is 3 or almost 4, but it's a block away. But I just this is really a tiny piece of property. And we have tried to get as efficient we can, as efficiently as we can, vertical circulation from down on the ground floor up to the 3rd floor. The spiral stair is there so we could eliminate square footage requirements for a stair from the 3rd floor. That's not even an egress stair. That's just in the event that the elevator goes down, you can still get off at the 3rd floor. It's that small. So the request is really a minimum. I mean, it's like we recessed from both sides of the property line back 8 and 10 feet in order to just get it away from the front wall. And you'll see at the elevations that the building is recessed back from the street, even though it is that small, and the renderings show the same thing. So we're trying to make the upper floor usable with the least vertical impact, if you will.
And I look at it from a time standpoint. We've been here a while. It's been vacant for a while. I understand the market. I 100% agree with the fact that probably a 3rd floor is more marketable as a residence or a living quarters rather than a commercial space. And that's my point, is the community at large, it has been there. I can only imagine what Square Books is probably thinking every day without any type of support for that back wall. I don't think 400 is like pointed out, it's not terrible. I understand the reasoning behind it. I guess I don't want to make every decision on the fact that it's been a while.
I agree that I'm sure it's more marketable as residents, whether it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. I would think that would for sure be more marketable, and I understand that. But I'm very tired of looking at that hole. I'm one of the people that has asked the city repeatedly, when's something going to happen with this? So I understand that people are ready for that to happen, including Square Books, I'm sure. I don't think that's a reason for a variance.
I agree. It's certainly not a basis for that we consider, but it's a consideration that I'm making in this case. But understanding that it's a variance 400 square feet. in order to properly market what's there.
Well, I think one-bedroom apartments are marketable also. That would be my point, is that it can still be residential. I understand the money might not be the same, and that's certainly but we've said many times, that's not our purview.
Agree.
It goes to the size of the property. I know that, I keep saying this, but it's the size of the real estate. If this were 132 feet deep, and we were 20 feet wide and 132 feet deep, we would be basically the same size. It'd be it's just a difference in the property, have different valuations. I mean,
everyone would still be here trying to squeeze out every single square inch of the property, no matter how big the property is.
I think that's your purview to review, just like this is.
Any more comments or questions? Anyone here tonight wish to voice an opinion on the request for the variance? All right. Hearing none, I will entertain a motion as to the request stated within 2754, the request for variance for property located at 208 South Lamar Boulevard. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve, subject to staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve, subject to staff conditions. Is there a second?
I'd second.
There's a second. All in favor of the motion? All opposed? The variance is approved. 4-3. The next item is case number 2755. It's Don Newcomb, and it's a request for a variance from section 2.6.7. It's a front yard build to line maximum, property located at 1615 University Avenue.
All right, the subject property is currently vacant and located on the north side of University Avenue between Provision Oxford and Community Donuts. There is a approximately 10-foot retaining wall located approximately 100 feet into the northern portion of the property. The applicant wishes to use the grade differential on the site to his advantage to allow for at-grade access at both the first and second floors for a potential restaurant. The request is for a 25.5-foot variance from the build-to line maximum for the front. The applicant states that this request is the minimum variance required to allow the functional use of the property, given its topography and proposed use. The applicant has also attached 2 alternate site plans to the proposed building, Site Plan A showing the applicant's preferred building location, and Site Plan B showing where the building would need to be located to stay within the build-to line. The plans indicate that in Plan A, there is a 1.5-foot gap from sidewalk to the second-story floor on the north side of the building. On the B plan, this gap increases to 4.5 feet. Precedent imagery of new developments is also included. Staff is not supportive of this variance request. In the submitted materials, the applicant has provided a layout that would work within the setback requirements of the LDC. If the fill material that is shown in Plan A was used in Plan B, the same 1.5-foot gap from sidewalk to second floor level could exist. Precedent imagery included is not especially applicable, except in that each of these developments, 2 rows of parking exist in the front of the building. The first 2 images are of developments designed and built previous to the adoption of the current LDC, and the final 3 are of locations not in a TNB district, and therefore not subject to the same build-to requirements. A more relevant comparison would be the recently approved site plan for Origin Bank, which will be constructed at 52 feet from the property line and facilitate a single row of parking. The intent of both the LDC and Vision 2037 plan is, in the traditional neighborhood locations, of which this is one, to move buildings closer to the road and at most to facilitate a single row of parking in the front. Staff commends the applicant for using creative design to work within the existing topography, but staff sees no hardship in this instance. Staff recommends denial of the requested variance.
Okay. Thank you, Robert. Any questions regarding 2755, the request for front yard build-to line? I have one. The Section A is the proposal. So Corey, is that yours as well? Corey, are you going to cut down the slope and then backfill? Is that what you're going to do with the 83 6-inch?
There are a few things here, and I'm again, I was kind of anticipating having the operable camera thing, but a couple of things about this. One is, I want to step back here for just a second and look at this from a big picture and then get to a specific picture, because I think we're cherry picking, and I want to make sure we kind of get an overarching picture here. The traditional neighborhood business zoning designation and the suburban corridor zoning designation are two different zones, obviously, but they're kind of two different zones cut from the same cloth. The front yard setback requirements for traditional neighborhood business are 0 to 58 feet. The front yard requirements for suburban corridor are 15 to 58 feet. So neither one are allowed to be over 58 feet without a special exception or a variance. So that's the general rule from the planning designation from traditional neighborhood business and suburban corridor. So that starts sort of where I'd like to begin with. What we've done is we have looked and have given examples of different properties that are existing, that are in the traditional neighborhood business zone, and because they exist, whether it's prior to an updated land development code or not, it doesn't take the precedent away. It just says they exist like this. In fact, West Jackson Avenue, the shopping center in the picture, is zoned traditional neighborhood business, but it has 2 rows of parking in front of it. Walgreens on University Avenue, again, predates land development code, the updated version, but it's also 2 rows of parking in the front. So as the land development code has evolved, the properties have been sort of grandfathered in, if you will, but it doesn't make them go away. So when you look at newer developments that are involving restaurants, particularly, like the other pictures I submitted in the proposal, it's El Charro and all the stuff that's happening out at Oxford Commons and around both sides of town, all of those developments are showing double loaded parking in front. As a matter of fact, the site plan you just approved tonight shows double rows of parking in front. Suburban corridor district, not traditional neighborhood business, but that is the general planning rule that is set up for retail and commercial property. Tonight's approval shows that. It was a consent agenda item. What we're asking for is the same kind of condition on University Avenue involving 8 total parking spaces. The issue I would take with the planner's comments are that the site plans are indistinguishable based on contours, and that is not so. A curb cut 25 feet down the hill cannot just warp the property up 3 more feet. That's what my section was trying to articulate, because if it did, it increases the slope that you got to catch up with on the low side. You can't just raise land without having to catch up on the low side, which means it raises 3 feet of elevation further down the hill, causing a steeper slope in the parking lot, generally. So given all of those factors, and as we begin to go through all of these different iterations, what we're requesting is 8 parking spaces, basically, to be in the front side of the building in order to allow as low a possible access from the back and the front. And the 4 criteria, as you know from variance requests, are what's peculiar about the land? Well, there's 15 feet of grade change. None of the photographs of retail spaces, commercial, residential, have 15 feet of grade change in them. So, and this commission and other commissions, I think, have likewise wisely used topography as a condition for a variance request. Sites like this are not sites like that. We're trying to enter basically as easily as possible from both sides. Does 83 feet have to be there? It could be 82, but we need to be 50 feet from the back property line because we're adjacent to a residential district. So a number of factors went into play. Dr. Newcomb and I have gone back and forth. I sent him the drawings and said, here's where we are. We're here to ask for the variance. We don't think it's anything that is We don't think we're harming the public interest. We don't think we're damaging any adjacent properties. We got a steeply sloping property. We'd like to make the ingress and egress on both floors as easy as possible, hence the variance request. I don't know what else I can say other than that.
But in section A, are you going to cut down the slope and backfill?
In section A, let me grab the section real quick. Section A is shown with that red line is exactly what we intend to do. That follows, this is the most accurate drawing I can give you given the floor plans and the sections.
Sure. So the red line which goes through the building in section A, you're going to cut that down and either dispose of it or backfill it somewhere on the lot.
Oh, we'll be hauling it away.
Okay.
And on section B, we'd be bringing dirt in, if you will.
So you're going to be bringing dirt in regardless?
We don't think so. In the upper section, our variance request is not going to, we don't think it's going to require us to bring, it will on the downhill side, a little bit in the parking lot, but not where the building is. We don't know if we can reuse that little bit of dirt that's behind that retaining wall or not without doing a soil bore.
But the existing grade line is below the final grade line.
Yes.
Everywhere.
That's right. The contours are, if you went out there, if you saw it, it's kind of convoluted. It's a messed up site. The site, we're having to stick with the road. So 17th Street is driving the bus here on contours.
Mm-hmm.
So if we pull the building further back, we start losing parking spaces. And so when you're looking at double loaded parking, and how you're gonna have to transition down and around the building,
mm-hmm.
that's the issue with the site plan, is transitioning from a curb cut at the high side to a curb cut at the low side. As soon as you start moving that curb cut further down the hill and warping back up, you're going to increase that steepness going down the hill. This is, I mean, it's just math.
But you're bringing in fill dirt in both cases?
We may be bringing in all kinds of dirt. I haven't done soil borings yet. I don't know what's under there.
So you don't know? Yeah, I get it.
I get it. Dig down there.
You don't know if you can backfill what's there.
I don't know what's underneath there.
I understand.
I don't want to tell you something without having soil borings done.
Sure, I get it.
But the contour drawing you see and the site plan you see are representative of the two options. One is that shows the building slid forward in order to comply with the Land Development Code's updated requirements, and that is giving us an 8 parking space in the front, moving to 8 parking spaces in the rear in total. But it also requires the back of the building to be 4.5 feet out of the ground, which is not conducive to delivery, pickup, or any other kind of function generally. So that's the reason. That's the hardship, if you will.
But you could bring in more fill dirt there too on that back portion and raise that elevation.
The curb cut's driving. That's the misnomer in the comment, is once you slide the curb cut down the hill, you can't work back up to the building because you're picking up the same elevation going around. I don't know how else to say that. If you look at C1.1 and you look at contour 311, and I said I'm going to take contour and make it 314, then 311 gets pushed closer to 310 and 309, and 312 comes in and 312. So the curb cut you see right there where it says 312 and 313, that's 312.5. And if the thing was overhead, if it'll work, I'll show you. It'll make a little more sense. Curb cut. If I have a curb cut up here, and I have a curb cut down here, the difference between getting from here to there is pulling into a parking space and having these parking spaces be on a gradual slope. If I take this and pick up the dirt elevation in here, then that makes all this steeper. So now I'm running down, you open your door to your car and slams on you if you don't get out of the way. That's why the slope of the parking lot is determined on getting as gradual as it can be, so that you don't open the door on the uphill side, get out of your car and have it slam back behind you. The difference is 3 feet. That's the difference between site plan A and site plan B, is 3 feet of elevation, given the topography along this street, which is that steep.
3 feet of slope in the parking lot.
It'd be 3 feet additional slope in the park.
Sure,
Exactly.
right. Any additional comments or questions? Anyone here tonight wish to oppose the variance?
This may be a stupid question, Corey, but is there any in between? Is there any, or Ben, is there any way to get your 2 rows of parking, but it not be this pushed back this far?
The consent agenda tonight's item had 79 feet 7. That was what was approved.
That was in a different.
I get it, but the setback requirements are the same in both. They're both, one's the variance and one's a special exception, but both ordinances are written the same. It's 0 to 58 feet or 15 to 58 feet. I get it. I understand the way the ordinance is written. It's not, it's not confusing. It's just topography, and this site is unlike the other sites that you have photographs of that have restaurants and some retail businesses in them.
So I'm gonna say the answer to my question is no.
Yeah, it can move forward a little, but we need the double loaded parking in front.
Well, I think just as a response, excuse me, Corey, just as a response, the TNB, when you look at the standards, it actually says for a row of parking. It doesn't say for 2 rows of parking. Suburban Corridor did contemplate larger setbacks, having buildings be farther back to accommodate larger big box facilities. If you recall, places like Walmart, things like that, it did contemplate that, but it also didn't want to just by right tell all developers to build it as far back as you possibly can, as what typically has happened. We heard in multiple iterations through the Vision 2037 process that that was less than desirable for Oxford. So we did work in a provision, and Corey, inside the suburban corridor, it does allow for a special exception to be granted to go as far back as 150 feet. So that's not the same as TNB. It's not the same as suburban corridor. So I think they're, to sit here and say that number one, that pre-existing development, because it's zone TNB, we should just accept it the way it is and we should continue to replicate it. I don't buy into that. So I also don't, I don't agree with, the comparison of restaurants in suburban corridor and saying that they're the same as TNB, in spite of the fact that they have similar setbacks. They do suggest different styles of development, and as was previously noted, just down the street we did approve an Origin Bank that complies with that provision too. So we're starting to see new development that are occurring, in nearby areas that are consistent with the TNB zoning district. So.
I agree with Vincent. There's no question. The restaurant use and the bank use are not, they're not the same.
What sort of restaurant is this, Corey?
Dr. Newcomb is working on a concept. That's all I can tell you. He has not divulged to me anything other than, here's what I'd like to do. And I'd like to tell you more, but I didn't ask. Because without the variance, I don't know it's gonna sit there like it is now. I just can't tell you, Duncan. I'm sorry. But
So the parking on the side, that does not change. The amount of that does not change with either. It's just these 8 parking spaces move from front to back as far as the amount where the parking is.
8 spaces move from front to back. That's the difference in a nutshell. And the curb cut from being on the very high end, which makes a more gradual transition to the very low end, by moving it down 25 feet, makes it steeper by 3 feet to make that same transition. And you'll see the black lines in there are retaining walls. It's not like they're, those black lines mean something. Those are retaining walls holding the earth back. It's a tight little site. I don't think they come to me with the easy ones. I think they come to me with the hard ones.
Any additional questions, comments? Hearing none, I understand that no one here is opposed. I think I've already asked that.
Corey, it's 1,800 square feet per floor, right?
Correct.
And 1,800.
We got, there's a little patio on the lower floor.
So it's, yeah, do you know the square, because as of right now, it's 1,800 square feet, so 3,600, call it 4,600 square feet, 1,000 square foot of patio, it's probably less than that, right?
The patio is gonna be like 450 square feet, maybe 500 feet. So we'll be at 3,600 heated.
Yeah, so as of right now, for a restaurant of that size, the parking requirement would be approximately 20, and that's what the additional 25%. So even, you know, even the design as of right now is more than twice what the parking requirement would allow for a restaurant of this particular size. So I just caught it, so.
What does that mean?
That means he's showing 50 parking spaces, and right now code would require 20.
So even if this was approved, we'd have to come back again and do a
For
whole
variance.
nother
To
parking
ask for
variance
those-
for
for that
that.
many?
Or we reduce the parking, either way.
If you reduce the parking, then you might be able to move your curb cut and a little high road, so you
Yeah.
can grade. You can take out those 7 parking spaces up the top.
The concept is to pull in delivery out upper floor, restaurant on the lower floor. That's the concept. I know what's going on, is that he wants delivery, pick up, and leave. The kitchen's on the second floor, as I put in my letter, and that the restaurant's on the first floor. That's what I know about the concept. So pulling in and pulling out, DoorDash or whatever, in the upper floor with the kitchen, pick up delivery, and the lower floor is the restaurant. That's what I know about the design of the restaurant. And that's what I put in my letter. That's all I know. I know that, you know, obviously, you know, green.
So I don't, okay, so I don't understand, I mean, I understand the slope of the parking lot, and you don't want your door slamming on you and all, and that is a very steep, I get all that. You keep saying this about the drive-in, drive-out, DoorDash, whatever, they can't go up 3 or 4 steps into the door of the restaurant to pick up their
Well, it's not
food?
desirable to have it equal 4 or 5 steps to, I mean, you're talking about, it's 4 feet 6, 54
Well-
inches, so you're talking about 8 or 9 steps to go up and down to go pick up food and leave. I just don't know what, I guess,
I just didn't understand what the,
I'm trying to figure out
reasoning of
what's
that
the-
was.
just generally, what's the harm? What's the damage? Is it because they're going to setting a precedent that other people might go, hey, look, you gave it to them, and now I want it too? I mean, is that? I'm just trying to get you gauge what's the.
I just want to stick to, you know, what the 2037 vision was, which was that, as Ben mentioned, there was a lot of feedback on what we wanted to move to, which was, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, less 2 rows of parking in the T&B. That's what, yeah, and so just trying to stick to that, and in general, like with you know, for me personally, with the previous case, the convenience and the business need and all that sort of stuff, that's not my responsibility, you know, so it's just trying to stick to the land development code as articulated, and so that's the holdup.
And I understand. That's what variances and special exceptions are for. Are there conditions that are peculiar to the land that are not like other pieces of land? I mean, that's the 4 criteria for a variance.
Any more discussion? I agree with you, this is a peculiar lot, for sure.
I see it every day when I'm at Community Donuts.
Any additional comments? All right, hearing none, is there a motion on the request for variance stated within 2755?
I'll move that we deny the variance.
There's a motion to deny the request. Is there another motion or second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor of the motion pending, which is to deny the request?
Thank you.
All right. 2756 has been postponed. Public hearing for case 2757 is Clint Boutwell. It's a request for special exception provided in 311-9, unenclosed rooftops. Property located at 1107 East Jackson Avenue, currently under construction.
So this building is situated on East Jackson Avenue. It's between the old St. Leo Lounge more recently, and Renaissance Bank. It is located in the Courthouse Square Preservation District. It's zoned historic urban center. It's approximately 0.06 acres, and this request is for a special exception for an unenclosed rooftop. The existing building it does have a second floor pushed all the way to the back. It's about half of the building would have a second floor. There are some existing mechanical units that are in front of that, but the front half of the building is not used for any other purposes outside of mechanical. We did have initial conversations with Mr. Boutwell's architect and they would like to utilize that front half for an addition that would allow for additional dining and rooftop dining. So we did look at some early sketches. We did take those to the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission, and that was evaluated by the Courthouse Square Preservation as part of a complimentary review, which if you're not familiar, it's basically a dialogue, say, hey, this is a concept that we're considering, and getting some initial feedback from the commissioners. They did receive that feedback, and then in subsequent conversations, we, with the applicant, his architect, it's actually what you have in this packet. And so a lot of the other elements that were originally provided were removed, and I think it's a more minimal proposal than what was previously considered, and I did provide you with the I think the complimentary review as part of this packet. But so it's a little bit of a stripped down version. I did provide the the conditions and the criteria for the use. So it does require physical barriers to to prevent somebody from, I think, number one, from a safety standpoint, from falling off of a rooftop. Number two, I think it's to help minimize any potential for somebody to drop something or intentionally throw something down onto the ground. So in this instance, they did provide for a barrier. I think that they have a seat wall very similar to, I think, what the Green Roof Lodge has also provided. So it does provide some distance between Jackson Avenue and the rooftop. There is a requirement for non-breakable materials. This request doesn't acknowledge it, but it would be a condition of approval if that were, if the commission so chooses. Distribution, so you're not supposed to prepare or mix drinks or things like that out on the rooftop. That's something that would be served to you, or a client would go in and they would get from inside the building. Seating requirement, so there's a requirement for, based on the occupancy, to have a seat for every person that's supposed to be on the rooftop. We don't have those in this submittal, but it would be a condition that it would be limited, and I think the fire department would have to evaluate that too with the building official to ultimately come to the determination of what is the occupancy load, and then whether or not they're able to meet that requirement. Building age. So this is, if some of y'all might recall, as part of the Vision 2037 process, this was a discussion as we were starting to see multiple requests for rooftop or balcony type of requests. And there was concern about the viability of the buildings that were built many years ago and their ability to structurally support the weight load, especially for commercial use. It's one thing if you have a residential use where you have, one or two people you know, out there using it for coffee or for cocktails or whatever, versus, 8 to 5 or noon to 10, whatever the case may be, with multiple people on there. So it was ultimately determined that about 50 years, a building of 50 years of age would be, thinking through the continuum of when that structure was built, and was it built to be able to sustain that. And in this instance, the plans that, actually it was more through our conversation, that they intend to construct a new structure within this existing structure and then build a roof on top of it. And so the use would be on top of that structure, as I understand it, although we don't have plans that really indicate that, but that's our understanding of it. And so I think that that's, the report goes on to talk about that. That's a little bit outside of the thought process of what we had for vision, for the code. But nonetheless, that's what they're requesting, and that's their interpretation of what the provision says.
Ben, may I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
Is that the statement in here? You said that they kind of exceeded the spirit of the code. Is that what you're?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I think it's a little it's a more liberal interpretation of what we envision. We didn't think of new structures built inside of existing facades, because I think that provision in the code was trying to protect the historical the historical resources that we have inside the courthouse square district, and so that's why it's there, in addition to the safety elements. And then F did not apply, and then G is subject to the building official, his review of the structural plans, et cetera. And so we provided some commentary based on the initial discussion from the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission, from that complimentary review. So as you see, that there was some need to, I think, modify the proposal. And then, since that request, staff was actually called to a meeting with the city engineer, Edie Conkerton, John Lewis, the applicant's attorney, and then the applicant himself, and then Kate Kenwright represented the city, or at least our staff, for that portion. And what was uncovered as part of the East Jackson Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project was the foundation for this particular building. And there was concern, the applicant expressed concern, and their professionals expressed concern related to the building, the mortar, and the need for, or the deferred maintenance that has taken place over the years. And and so staff's evaluation of that is that there is maintenance. There is maintenance related to tuck pointing the brick and that mortar over time. I mean, that's just part of being owning an old building. But it was also discussed at that time, and the applicant and the architect might be able to better articulate this, but there was the thought of proposing a demolition or requesting a demolition from the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission to tear this building down and then rebuild a new building. We have not received any of those plans, nor the application for that request. We won't. Okay. So now they're not going to move forward with that, which is great. So our position was that the provisions in the ordinance do not allow for commercial use on unenclosed rooftops. The purpose of that was to not only ensure that those buildings will be safe for patrons, to preserve the historic resources in this district. We believe that the interpretation was beyond the spirit of this ordinance, staff believes that the applicant's interpretation, the application that was submitted lacks some specific details that I think we need, and I think the commission needs to be able to make the final determination of whether or not to approve this. If the applicant does intend to submit a proposal for the demolition of the building, then we think that the Courthouse Square Preservation Commission should ultimately hear that and determine that before this commission decides on the special exception for the unenclosed rooftop. Therefore, we recommended denial for this special exception. I did list some conditions in here should you choose to grant that.
Thank you, Ben.
You bet. And Edie Conkerton, Mr. Boutwell's in the room as well.
Any questions from the commission?
Yes, but I'm not ready yet.
Okay. I have a question, Edie.
I thought you would, and I also have some comments to make, but
I have my question is, if this has not been approved by Courthouse Square, would we be giving an approval, a special exception on something that the design may be totally different?
no, because we are talking about, we've actually gone from having extra railings at the top, things like that, to leaving the building as it is, putting a 6-foot space between where the people will be in the front of the building. And what we're asking for the special exception is for unenclosed rooftop. We would have to provide the seating layout, and I mean, obviously it goes to safety and permits, is the structural and construction plans. But no, you would be saying, yes, you can use the current area that is unenclosed rooftop, which will have the stair that's added there, as such.
And the unenclosed rooftop, again, I'm not an engineer, you would put and basically build another, this is, you're probably going to object.
Go ahead and say it.
No, no.
You're probably going to not like the way I'm going to say this, and that's fine, but it's just the way it's in my head. You're going to build another building inside of it. Understand you're not. You're going to braces, and all your load is going to be on those braces that are going inside the new building.
We are, and what is actually shown on here is we are going to take, and I think this is completely in the spirit of preserving what's here. We are going to take 6x6 steel columns, 20 feet apart, going the length of the building from Jackson back to the parking lot. And then in between those, we're going to have metal bar joists. And we are going to essentially create a skeleton that will maintain what is there and will maintain the scale and the size.
And obviously, Ben, if they do this, they have to pass inspection, and whether or not load can, whether or not what they put in there can substantiate the load expected. I got it.
So, Mr. Chairman.
Are you ready?
Yeah, well, you brought up the point. Okay.
Correct, and that item G, as part of the evaluation for the use, that really specifies any additional information that might be necessary by the, or needed by the building official as part of his review, could be requested at that time as part of the expense of the applicant.
And we're already working with Chris Carter. John Lewis is working with Chris, and he's explained to Chris exactly how we're going to put the foundations in for these posts. And considering what happened when the sidewalk was ripped out with the bank, is it Regions or Renaissance or Renaissance? That what we discovered there is terrifying. We think everything's going to be a lot better off by bracing this.
So I guess my conundrum, and Mr. Chairman, you brought it up, is either it's a rooftop terrace on a building that's over 50 years old, or it's a secondary structure on the property. Naively,
Okay?
right?
Yeah, our goal was to preserve what was there.
You mean the skeleton inside?
Well, they're claiming
Because
it's a separate
second
structure, right?
It is because,
Contained within the old one.
Well, the
contained within the old.
I understand. None of the original structure is going to be supporting what's on top, so it's basically a
either
second
it's
structure.
not a rooftop of the current structure, or it is. That's my conundrum. So we need a different kind of case if it's a secondary structure.
It'd still be unenclosed rooftop.
So even if it is a new structure, it's still.
It's a very tall patio.
No, actually, we're lowering it. Yeah, it's a very tall patio, but we are taking, if you look at the section of the building right now, if we took what is there right now, you have to go above 12 feet to almost 14 feet. And when you are at the current top of the wall on the rooftop, it's only up to about here, well, at least on me, but we are going to, the ceiling is going to be lowered and the structure is going to be lowered enough that we don't have to put anything else up, and we are above, I mean, it's going to be here, and actually code only requires a barrier of up to here.
So
Does that make sense?
I'm unclear on what you're enclosing up there.
We're not.
Are you just, what will be enclosed is just basically what's enclosed now? It will just look like this if you were standing up there at elevation on?
Yes.
Okay, because we've been through this before.
Okay.
When I was on historic preservation. Didn't we go through this whole thing?
Oh, we did,
Yes,
but they were talking
We all
about
walked down there as a commission in the middle of a meeting.
Yes.
Stand back and look at it to see.
completely different owner. Clint
Right,
has
I
bought
understand
this
that, but-
building. And, I mean, in my mind, I think in Kate's as well, probably Ben's, this building does not need to be 2 stories at the front.
Right.
Not unless the rest of the
Yeah, I doubt
buildings
historic
start
preservation's
doing
gonna
that.
ever let that happen, so that's
Yeah.
not what I'm worried about. But I just was trying to clarify what.
No, so it's not gonna look, other than the fenestration we're putting in the back where there's currently an enclosed second floor, which you can't see, you can see a little bit from the street if you go down the street.
And a stair enclosure, right?
And the stair enclosure, which we have now taken, it's much lower, much smaller, and we are sloping it down based on everybody's comments. So actually, what we are here for tonight is use of an unenclosed rooftop.
Okay, well, I have another question, which maybe is more historic. Maybe I'm asking things that I shouldn't be asking.
Okay.
But, okay, when you're looking at the elevation on the right, the man standing there, he's down below the wall, which I understand. You have signs up there on the second story, even though it's way back. Why does it need to be that tall still? Why does that need to be 16 feet tall?
It actually doesn't, but that is what is there now.
Okay.
And on this, we were counting on keeping that. And that is, I mean, part of one of the things I have looked at, yeah, one of the things I was looking at, I mean, we are going to have equipment that's going to be up there on that roof and need to be shielded. But that's going to go a lot farther back on that roof. That's going to go back by that parking lot.
That's gonna go up.
Yeah, and now if we're doing this all through, the equipment will end up on the roof in the back. And be shielded.
Excuse me, I'm trying to understand your last comment, which,
Okay.
which was the equipment, it's now sitting
It's now sitting
enclosed?
in the front, unenclosed.
Okay, on the top of the first floor, and now
Yes.
is it gonna move to the top of the second floor, back in the back?
It is, but that is actually shielded because some of those walls come up, make it almost 3 stories.
Okay.
And we don't need that ceiling height inside.
Right.
Let me, Ben, this is directed to you. We don't really have an idea about the integrity of the building right now other than the foundation. Is that correct? I think y'all had a note in there about Chris hasn't made any decision. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah.
So the, John Lewis, the structural engineer for the applicant, has been over there evaluating the building. I believe he's in the process and may have, or is nearing completion on a structural report. We have not received that yet. The building official has been over there to evaluate it, and then Kate has also been over there. So, I mean, at this moment, we don't have a structural report submitted to the city to evaluate.
Don't really have any info. Okay.
We've seen it.
That only involves, I'm sorry, that only involves the foundation, the front
wall.
facade.
The front facade, right.
We know we have to maintain the brick, do the tuck pointing and things like that. Part of what I saw when the walk was ripped out was a lot of sand that used to be brick and mortar. So it scared me a little bit, but Kate has said that they have a masonry consultant who can get us through this.
I don't believe those are my exact words. We do know a masonry consultant who helps us with 208 who I'm happy to put you in touch with, but you're free to use any consultant.
Right, but you said there is, but you said there are ways of remediating this.
Yeah, I don't think we can expect, I understand it's shocking when we recover the foundation, but also the equipment age of the building, it's not shocking that it would need to be repointed at this time.
So
As long as there's something there to repoint, we will do it.
So there may or may not be.
Yeah.
That we're going to attach these steel beams to.
No, the steel beams are gonna be supported completely on their own.
Okay, all right.
They are getting, because we have all of that. We have all of that. They're getting a completely separate, individual concrete foundation.
Okay.
That's gonna be dug
That's
out.
our building within the building.
Yes,
Okay, all right.
yes. And then the new bones are going up, and then the new finishes. Well, a lot of the finishes are gonna stay exposed, but.
I just worry
Brian,
that we're going to have another 208 situation.
No, that is not our intention.
Well, I know it's not your intention. Trust me. But we've already in the
I know.
last year and a half demolished 2 buildings on the square.
I see the holes. Yeah. Yeah, and I come from a place where we don't do that. Not if we can help it in any way, but I just did this and scheduled it for Brian's last meeting as chair.
You and everybody else.
But yes, no, we had all of this in, the applications in, to keep the facade, do all of this, and then the city tore out the sidewalks. I'm just saying, because I called
You're the
y'all
city, Kate.
immediately.
You're the city. Here's my.
All right.
I'm not saying. I'm not. Please don't take this as a no vote or anything like that. But I'm hesitant to vote on something that I don't even know can be done. Have we had somebody who can say that it can be done?
We've done it in New Orleans. We have a lot less ground down there to support things.
I believe you. I'm just, it's more of what's going through my head, and I'm letting my inner monologue go down, come out.
Yeah.
It's just if it's not, if somebody says it, nobody's told me that it can happen. And I guess, are you seeking approval so you can do that? I mean,
we're seeking approval so that we can use all we want is to be able to use the unenclosed rooftop.
Sure. And in order to do that, we got to put steel beams
in order to do
inside the
that,
building.
we can't. I mean, actually, right now, the structure is supporting all this huge air conditioning equipment that's going to go away anyway, because what's going to go back is much smaller and more compact. But I mean, there's steel beams up there right now, but nobody can say that what is up there will last.
Well, if you're right, we're voting on can you use this for that or not. I don't know, do we have anything to do with what happens inside of that building, how they hold it up? I mean, that may
That's
be
Chris
between the
Carter,
building department
but-
and them. I don't know
Yeah.
that we have anything in the world to do with that.
Yeah, at some point in time, somebody's got to sign off on it or not sign
Yeah,
off.
I think that's the pulling the permit.
Well, that's where our licenses, John's, mine, everybody else's, comes into play.
But I think
Jump in.
Go ahead. Well, what I was gonna say is that, I mean, just superficially, it fails the criteria for a special exception, which is that it's a building older than 50 years. So the engineering comes in because they're trying to mitigate the older than 50 years. Correct. But where I get hung up is that it's not part of the building anymore. It's a separate structure.
I don't think it's a separate structure. I think
She said it has a separate foundation, and
Well-
the building itself will not be load bearing.
Will the
That sounds like-
foundation touch the old foundation?
Okay.
You're adding to the old foundation.
Think of it this way, that it's a building in as much as you have bones and skin. We're redoing the bones, but the skin's staying.
Yeah, but so this gets to my second point, which is that I think it's getting around the spirit of the ordinance in the first place, which was to preserve sort of the overall integrity of the older buildings, right? Because anybody could come in and build
Well,
something from the ground up on top of the
Anybody
older
can,
buildings.
but we don't want to have to take down what's there or come to you and say, especially with an infill building, and say, we want to change all of this and build something, big and ugly, or something that really changes the fabric of the square. We want
I think
to.
there are probably a lot of these buildings that are going to need endoskeletons built, basically. Or
It's
we're
going to
or
keep
they're all gonna be
happening,
208.
yes.
That's sort of your choice. You can rebuild
Yeah.
them on the inside and save the facade, or you can lose them.
Yes,
I
that's
really do think
exactly
that's
what's.
practical.
And it's inevitable at some point. And I think, I think there's a couple places that have stepped up. I'm not sure what happened with Ajax and all of that, but I think there's a couple places that have stepped up and reinforced what's there.
Well, the reality is that what's the inside of this building is that there's not original historic material on the interior.
Sure, you could go in and put up a bunch of steel beams for decoration on the inside if you wanted to. It wouldn't have anything to do with us.
No.
And if the code said you can't do it on 50-year-old buildings unless they're structurally improved, that would be different.
Well,
you're going strict construction. It shall not be permitted on structures 50 years or older.
Yeah.
And they're saying, and I get your point, they're saying we're not putting it on a structure 50 years old, we're putting it on
a revamped structure.
A new structure. I get it. I know. Your interpretation of that section is we cannot place it on a building that can't support it, basically.
Exactly. Or that we can't verify can support
That's
it.
your spirit of the rule is 50 years or older. That was the whole purpose behind that. Hey, we can fix that because we can now place in these beams, and we can now, the actual 50-year-old building is supporting nothing on top. Okay. I get your point 100%. I know. Anything else? The right side's been quiet tonight. I just want to give them a shot. All right. There is nothing else. Anyone here tonight wishes to oppose or support the request for special exception? Hearing no one here tonight, is there a motion in regards to 2757, the request for special exception? Use of an unenclosed rooftop, property located at 1107 East Jackson Avenue. I'm hearing no motion. Go ahead, Commissioner Freeman.
I would make a motion to support the staff recommendation of denial.
There's a motion to deny the special exception. Is there a second or another competing motion to be made?
I'll second it.
There is a second. Any other motions?
Can I ask why? I mean, I want to know.
I feel like we're a little bit premature in this process, that there are a lot of unanswered questions, and that the points that JR brought up about is this a new building or is this a more than 50-year-old building? I'm uncomfortable with that.
Okay, well, is it possible to table this and come back with answers? Oh, okay.
They can withdraw the motion.
Yes. If the applicant intends to withdraw the application.
If
And then we can.
You could resubmit.
We can resubmit. We won't have any.
And then I wouldn't be here.
Minimum of how long now?
All right, let me say this. Here's my understanding of the procedure, Edie, and this is a watered down version of Robert's rules. There is a motion pending. That motion has been seconded. The next call would be for a vote, unless this gentleman who made the motion, Commissioner Freeman, wishes to withdraw his motion. At that time, he can withdraw the motion. There would be no vote. And we would, I guess, entertain a motion to either table it or you could withdraw your application. I want to work with you as much as possible, but I'm leaning on his fence as well. I think more information I just think it's a little cart before the horse right now, as far as the request for special exception. That's not saying that I'm against it, not saying I'm for it. I just would like to know more.
Okay, yeah, well, and that's why I asked why, because I don't want to be, I mean, are we stuck with 6 months or something?
No, if you
deny it.
If you denied it, you would have, your only option would be to go before the Board of Aldermen. If you withdrew it or it was tabled, it could be tabled and reset at the next meeting. Or if you withdrew it, you could resubmit it and in time for the next meeting. I assume 2 weeks. What have we got? 3 weeks? Well, we got a month. We got a month because today we're meeting, and so we would meet.
And we'll have.
I would ask if we could table it, just gather some more information.
Okay. You are the applicant, Mr. Boutwell. All right. Mr. Boutwell were you okay? Would you withdraw if it's your choice, it's your motion?
Yes, sir.
All right, I have a withdrawal of the motion. Is that a withdrawal of the second? All right. Angie, let the record reflect that he did agree to withdraw his second. JR did. So at this point in time, is there a motion to table the request on 2757 until additional information is placed?
I'll make a motion to table it.
There's a motion to table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There is a second. All in favor of table? All right. Edie is tabled.
Thank you.
At a time when you wish to be placed back on the agenda.
And we'll continue working with everybody. And thank you for, I wanted to understand the reasoning, and thank you for that. And the good news is we'll be back.
Thank you, Edie.
Hey, Ben, can I ask something of you all? I know that the conversation about not building a structure on a 50-year-old building, and completely get that, but if there was reinforcement done, would that change how we view some of those decisions, like they were talking about, with the steel beams and things like that? Because I understand why we put that in there, and that's just an internal conversation. You don't have to answer it now, but.
Okay. Yeah, we'll contemplate that. We'll look at it and evaluate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Next item is Updraft Investments LLC. It's case number 2758. They have a request for variance from section 3.2.18, which is retaining walls, property located at the Lamar. Robert.
Okay, the subject property is Phase 4 of the Lamar TND. This phase will connect Chickasaw Road to the existing Phase 2 of Lamar, and will be a mix of attached and detached residential. This property is currently under review for a preliminary plat. The applicant is requesting the ability to construct retaining walls of up to 12 feet in the side and rear yards to address the challenges of topography on the property. The LDC limits retaining walls in detached residential developments to 6 feet inside and rear yards. The applicant states as a hardship the extreme topography that exists on the property. Of the 12 retaining walls proposed by the applicant, 4 would have sections of wall in excess of 6 feet. Additionally, the applicant states that allowing these retaining walls will allow them to build to the density that is envisioned by the TND plan. This property is a mixed development containing attached and detached residential in this phase, and also commercial elements in other phases. The unique nature of the TND sets this development apart from traditional single-family developments in multiple ways. TND developments come with their own set of standards to ensure that the goals of the TND are achieved. This configuration of retaining walls saves a significant amount of space on the north and southern portions of the property and allows for rear loading of lots from alleys. Staff agrees that the topography on this land is extremely challenging and believes that this solution is a good balance between the retaining wall requirements of the LDC and the intent of the TND provisions. This will allow for rear loading lots, and the face of the proposed walls will be towards the new construction, meaning the prospective home buyers will be aware of the retaining walls when they purchase the property. Staff would like to ensure that these walls are properly screened and would request a condition of approval to that effect. Staff recommends approval of the requested variance with the 2 conditions in the report. The applicant's engineer is here.
Any questions from the commission? Robert, the current drive that's on the back end, the rear loading drive, that's not there now, but has it been put in as a result of being able to, if they're allowed to do the retaining walls, that rear loading will be added?
Yes.
Okay, got it. All right, any more questions? Anyone here wish to oppose the variance? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion on 2758.
Motion to approve the request subject to staff conditions.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor? All opposed? Thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda tonight. A personal note, I appreciate all of you very much. I don't want to get too sentimental here, but 5 years, it's been fun. Thank you all for your time and your service. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. And good luck in your future endeavors. I hope you stay on as long as you can, Marvin. Gray, you as well. I know new people will be rotating in and off, but I hope I have enjoyed it. And I'll see y'all around. Good luck with handling Mr. Boutwell's table. With that said, I'll entertain a motion. And also, Ben, thank you for this last meeting. It was great. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
There is a second. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.